Hey there, my name is Jash. I'm a student at University Canada West, currently pursuing my BA in Business Communications. Today, I'll be interviewing two of my professors, Karen Tankard and Wahiba Chair, on their latest project, the Comms Major podcast. So, let's get started. How did you both end up in communications?
Oh, it's fun you asked that, Josh, because I actually don't have a traditional communications background. I started my career in tech. I had a health tech startup called Carrot Lines, which was an app that helped to connect health-conscious consumers with their favorite brands. And one of the things we were really good at was generating genuine engagement, building community, and getting a lot of prominent media coverage with no marketing budget. And so a lot of the brands that we were working with in the app started to take notice and essentially asking for my help with their social and content. And this was, over a decade ago when social was really at its infancy. And so I ended up pivoting into digital marketing and communications with my agency called Media Touch, where I was essentially working with health, wellness, and tech brands and helping them build deeper connections with their own communities and audiences using content, social, and events. And I also got to do a lot of coaching, which is how I got into teaching, which is a different story. Ultimately, after running my agency for a few years, I had the opportunity to join a larger agency and work on bigger projects for Toyota, Elections BC, YVR, and so on. And I'm really grateful for that experience because I'm able to bring it back to the classroom and tell these stories to my students, which they really enjoy. And I think as I reflect back on my story, at least two things stand out. The first one is that, the story does not make sense until you look back. And that's something I'm a firm believer in. You're really kind of connecting the dots and you just never know where things will end up. And so I tell this to my students all the time. And the second one is that when it comes to communications, especially in a time of AI, the conversions of marketing, tech, and comms, there is no one clear path to get into comms, and it's often not a straight line. And that's something I hope we get to talk about more on the Comms Major podcast, because I think it's important for our audience and listeners to know that as well.
And how about you, Karen?
Well, I come out of broadcast journalism, so a very different path from Wahiba's. I spent several decades working as a radio and then ultimately television and online reporter for CBC News. I spent a few years covering stories in the northwest part of the province, so that would be Haida Gwaii, Prince Rupert, Terrace, all the way to Smithers. So northern issues, a lot of issues such as Indigenous treaties, Indigenous claims for fisheries. Later, I worked in Vancouver, where I covered pretty much anything that was in the headlines, whether it's serial killers, mass murderers, elections, pretty much anything that was the story of the day I covered over the years. I then went into a nonprofit organization working as a communications officer. I was the editor of our magazine that went to our membership 4 times a year. I did media relations, so I acted as the media spokesperson for the organization. I did internal and external communications as well, member relations, stakeholder relations. And at the same time, I've been teaching for several decades broadcasting and communication students. And it's really wonderful to be able to share my stories, my work experiences, my experiences as a journalist, where every day is different with my students.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually, because I've taken so many courses with you already, and I've heard so many of your stories, but I'm sure you have tons of more to share. But yes, let's continue. How did you two end up working together on the comms major?
I'm so glad you asked that question because there's a story behind it. It's a long story, but I'm going to try to keep it short. You probably know I've been running these Beyond the Classroom series at University Canada West, which is essentially a private event in my classes where I invite guest speakers to share their experience, career advice, and case studies with my students. And it's often the highlight of the course. Like students say, that's the best part about the course. And every time I post that on LinkedIn, just like a short clip, I've had other students, educators, and just other professionals in my network actually reach out to me and say, I would love to watch the whole thing. Can you share that? And my answer is usually, well, I would love to share it. I still need to edit it. And obviously, I still haven't had a chance to do it. And then I realized, since there's a demand obviously for this kind of content and we can't find it anywhere else. Why not make a podcast and build on the idea so that we can benefit a greater audience? So I knew nothing about podcasts, and I was either going to learn it myself or collaborate with somebody who knew more than myself. So I turned to Karen, who was the expert in my world about podcasting, and I pitched it to her. It's like, would you do this with me? I really think there's something there. I can't find any of this content elsewhere. And I'm so grateful that she said yes. I've been learning a lot with her. And I really hope that she doesn't regret it because there's been a lot of hand holding. And like I said, I know nothing about podcasting, but ultimately, we've turned this into a research project at UCW to look at how we can use podcasting as a teaching and learning tool. So here we are. It's taken us a lot longer to get this off the ground with our combined schedules. But what's been most exciting and rewarding for me is not only the collaboration with Karen and learning, but also collaborating with students like you who are really helping us bring this content to life so that we can tell the stories and have more conversation with our listeners.
What's the comms major all about, and what can listeners expect?
Quick story. I was in the northwest part of the province in Terrace recently, where I met up with a former journalist, now retired journalist, who I worked with. We weren't in competition, but we covered many of the same stories together. And in fact, this reporter and I once drove, I think, 9 hours to cover the closing of a mining town in northern BC called Cassiar. And so we were reminiscing about what journalism used to be like. And journalism has changed and not so much for the better. But that's typical of the communications industry. As an instructor, I'm constantly having to update, refresh my content because so much changes in the communications industry, whether it's the communications side, the corporate communications, the public relations, or the journalism side. There is rapid change going on, accelerating with artificial intelligence. And we don't have any idea what the future really looks like. So, our goal with this podcast is to be able to educate students, people who are interested maybe in a career in communications, people who are looking for their first job or have taken their first job in the industry and want to stay up to date on what's happening. So we'll be looking at trends, we'll be looking at the best practices as the industry evolves. And we'll also be introducing our audience to some of the prominent players in the communications industry in British Columbia and possibly beyond, to inform our students about who really the key people are in the industry with a lot of experience who are as well navigating the changes that we'll be seeing going forward.
This is quite exciting. I want to say thank you to the both of you for giving us a teaser of what's to come, and I'm really looking forward to listening in on the Comms Major podcast when it's released.